all my life. Been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle paid the price. Want a slice, got to roll the dice. That's why all my life I've been grinding all my life. Look, all my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice.
For you guys, kind of give me a little bit of a, I somewhat know of you guys, but just give me a bit of a breakdown about who you guys are and your background, coming into this new podcast of yours.
Who wants to go first?
Tyler, you go. You don't talk as much as us. So.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll go second.
One.
Yeah, I'll go second. Brooks, you can wrap it up with a half-hour story.
yeah. I'll finish things up.
So I'm Tyler Simmons. I come from the largest all-black community in Canada, North Preston. I played volleyball for Team Nova Scotia, and a club back in the day was called Lakers and Metros. So I've been coaching volleyball since my first year of university. So that's been 10 years now at Mount St. Vincent. We went to nationals 8 years in a row. And yeah, I think our highest we've ever done was like 5th or 6th.
Decent.
So that's
Tell them who you coach with at Mount St. Vincent.
Oh yeah, I coached with Jordan's dad. Sorry, yeah, Jordan's dad, Derek. Justin actually coached with me.
The Brooks family. We'll get to him last, but the Brooks family is almost like volleyball royalty out in the East Coast. That's I've seen.
We appreciate that.
So the joke is that I'm Derek's oldest son. So everyone thinks that I'm his son because whenever we go somewhere, they see Derek and this other black guy, and they're like, "You must be his son." I'm like, "Nope, I'm not. Not at all." So they call me the third members of the Brooks family, the third brother.
Fair enough. I mean, there's very few black people in volleyball in general. So black people in volleyball in Nova Scotia is a different story. That's why I really appreciated your guys' podcast with Shanice. And in talking about that, just because it just brings up the realities that so many people within volleyball never really face, because volleyball is such a predominantly white sport.
Which is crazy to think about in Nova Scotia, because we have so many black communities that volleyball actually was like a very black sport back in the day. Like there's a lot of black people that played. All of my 8 uncles and aunts played volleyball.
Really?
Like every last one of them played volleyball, and it wasn't until like later that everyone started playing basketball instead. But like my 2 oldest brothers played. Like I grew up with knowing that volleyball was like a black thing almost, and then it changed. Yeah. Then when I went to junior high, it was like I was the only black player on my team and stuff like that. And then I met Jordan, and then him and I became good friends and became beach partners.
Did you guys play 2013 Canada games together?
No, that would have been too late for me. I think we tried out for the was it 2009, Jordan?
2009 indoor, yeah. We tried out for the indoor team, and then I did go for beach 4 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. We were on the core team, but we were too young, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jordan, because Jordan was playing on the beach. Justin played indoor, and your dad was reffing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you had the holy trinity of the Brooks family hanging out in Sherbrooke, Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
So Robbie,
I'll touch a bit about myself. Story's frozen there, but I know Tyler's story. I grew up in Truro or Stewiacke, played in the Tide club system, went to UNBSJ for a year, realized school wasn't necessarily for me. So, and then I got back into coaching. All three of us. So I'm an electrician now and a part-time coach, I guess. And so all 3 of us started coaching club together, and we've all played with each other, but not at the same time. And we just have this friendship. And so anyway, I'm the head coach at Mount Allison University now. And it was kind of weird first because it was the first time I coached without like my friend group. Because at first I was like, oh, this is sweet. And then at first I was like, man, this is a little different. So, so this was my first year coaching at Mount Allison.
It's awkward against cross the other side of the net.
Yeah, just because I'm petty and competitive. So, like, from whistle to whistle, like, don't talk to me. I'll if I know a team's weakness, I'll help, expose that. And that's part of like growing up playing against your friends, but keeping it competitive. So, and actually now Tyler and I were roommates, so that kind of helped the podcast be a little easier. So we're just sitting around. We're like, man, there's nothing really on volleyball. We've watched all these games now. Like, what's next? So, and then Jordan and I coached a provincial team for New Brunswick last summer, and then we all coached together under Jordan's father's club system, if that makes sense.
Okay, what club system is that?
The Sonics.
Okay, yeah, good old Sackville Sonics.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I coach against Jordan's father and Tyler's team now in the ACAA.
Sweet. The ACAA women's side has a lot more teams, let's say, than the ACAA men's side.
Yeah,
it does.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, we hosted this year, and so that was the first time in a long time there's been men's volleyball in the Mount A gym, and like just for people at the school to see and other people to see like the men's side, I think was huge for the sport. And yeah, but it does have a lot less teams in the league, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, not only in the league, but U Sports and CCAA, there's like a handful of teams between the two of them because we've just seen so many teams drop out in the past years. Before we get to Jordan, kind of just want to touch on that. Like, how is that a level of difficulty of finding, like, you know, you talked about how volleyball was bigger for you, Tyler, when you were younger, and then was it harder to find teams to play on, whether it's club teams, high school teams, you know, university, college teams, as you guys were growing up?
Yeah, so for club it wasn't, because there's a lot of club teams, but when it came to college, there wasn't too many, because I think it was just Kings, St. Anne's, and Dow were the only teams in Nova Scotia. So there's 3 teams that you could go play for as a male volleyball player. So then when I was in high school, it's like, I'm not going to make Dow, so I'm not going to play. I'm going to go play soccer instead. Right? That's where my path went. It's like, I'm going to go choose soccer because there's not as many places to go for volleyball.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what it's when you guys were talking to Shanice about the beach game and just how little beach game there is in the East Coast. For me, that's such a shame because, you know, you see on the international stage, you see like Austria. Austria's men's beach teams and women's beach teams are up there in, you know, the top of the world, top 15. But their indoor programs are so, like, I think they're ranked like 80th, like something way far down. But it's these smaller countries that have really been able to find success with the beach games because it's way easier to find 2 good athletes or maybe 4 good athletes to train against each other than it is to find 12 to put a team together. So that's why it's for me, it's just like, the East Coast, PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland should almost be going all in on the beach game.
100%.
Yeah. So Jordan, we kind of touched on you. We'll get. I guess we can get to you now. With the you know, as we mentioned, the kind of royalty of Nova Scotia volleyball. Your dad has been a big name and a big figure within Nova Scotia volleyball for a long time, and obviously that just kind of you know, was passed down naturally to you and your brother.
Yeah, for sure. So pretty well as soon as I can remember anything in my life, volleyball's been there. Dad's been, you know, started with just volunteering a lot of his time and doing a lot of officiating. So it just got to the point where Justin and I, if my parents wanted to stay together, we were going to have to go along for the ride because Mom wasn't willing to have us every single weekend. And so we just kind of fell in love with the game just from being around it so much. And, you know, we just like Justin and myself, like a lot of our very close friends, we kind of gained through that. So it's just been our life, you know? So, I played against these guys for a couple of years, you know, in club and then together a bit in provincial team. And then I decided, just like Tyler said, to stick around Nova Scotia as a male volleyball player. You know, you have to be French and go to St. Anne, or you go to Dow, which was one of the top programs in the country for years. And at the time that we were graduating, it still was. Or there was Kings as well. Unfortunately, doesn't have a men's program. So I started looking at, you know, I didn't really want to necessarily leave Atlantic Canada. So I started looking at some of the other options, and UMB was one. And that was where I decided to go play after the coach saw me play at Nationals. And I couldn't be more thankful. I'd considered Memorial before that. But I think because of me going to UMB and getting to meet that that New Brunswick volleyball community, I feel just at home here in Fredericton and with VMB as I do with VNS. Honestly, sometimes I almost feel like I'm a little more at home, if you want me to tell the honest truth. So I hope I don't offend anybody by saying that. But no, it's so. And then these guys have gotten to kind of get that connection with the other province as well. So like Robbie said, we did VMB last summer together. And yeah, just like you, I think, Everett, it seems like we're all this has just been a huge part of our lives for almost our entire lives. Since we first got that volleyball, got a little taste of the volleyball bug. I don't think it's ever left. I don't think it ever really will. So now we're here.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. It's definitely a situation where you're like, oh, this is, I remember like playing every other, I played every other sport growing up, but then my first volleyball team, this was before meeting everyone and going to play club in high school. We didn't win a game, but I still remember like over that summer being like, my mom, I was like 14. She's like, oh, you want to go do some like high performance camps? Like we can do like hockey or soccer or basketball. And I was like, no, I want to see if I can find some volleyball ones. Didn't end up finding ones, but then, life happens. You kind of get there. It seems to be a sport where once you get into it, you're into it, and you're not getting away anytime soon.
For sure. Where did you play club? We've talked about ourselves.
I played my first few years. I played for the Ottawa Kangaroos.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So that 2006 year, they would have won nationals, 16U nationals in Moncton, actually.
I remember, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was against Brett LeDrew, right?
No, Brett LeDrew was my year, and we beat Brett LeDrew's team, Clarenville High School. Because, dude, that was one of our best wins ever. Because Clarenville High School showed up at the last minute. This was 2007? I don't know. This was my 16U year. And I remember they showed up at the last minute, and no one knew who they were, and they just like ran through the tournament. Like they won their pool on day one, won their pool on day two. Then again, like the top four ended up like the top four teams from that nationals were all in our pool. So my team finished last, and we had to play Clarenville first thing, and it was one of the craziest games we've ever played. And we won that one. And but yeah, I remember Brett LeDrew because I remember him just hitting step arounds over top of me. And like, what can we do? We actually won that game by keying in on Brett LeDrew. It was like they won the first set, and then after that we were just like, okay, well, he's their guy. So every time we're just gonna like put up 2 on him. And yeah, but I mean, I wasn't a very, let's say, skilled guy. In 18U, I went to go play for the Ottawa Mavericks, and that was a very, very good team. And I was a bench guy for that one. So played a year of college, but then after that, it was just all of this. Real quick, we're about to get kicked off by Zoom. So you guys cool if I just shoot you guys another invite real quick?
Yeah.
And then whoever is watching live,
we're just getting started.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever's watching live can just kind of like hold your horses for a second, and we'll be right back on. So just give us a second, and we'll be right back.
Since then, actually, to be honest,
I know, man. I've just been sitting inside. First day outside, and I get torched.
All right. Well, we're not live again. Unfortunately, for some reason, I have like software that does the streaming, and it only works on my laptop and not my desktop. But yeah, it's just complicated. So unfortunately, I can't stream this live right now. But as soon as we're done, I'll throw it up, and then I'll show you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
The recorded files and such. Where were we? Well, we just discussed the legacy of Mr. Brooks down there.
Yeah, and Brett LeDrew. I think we just Brett LeDrew. Yeah.
Brett LeDrew. Well, I still remember that. Like the next year or something, he was playing Canada games in the middle for Newfoundland. Him and Max Burt.
I think he was the youngest player. He might have been the youngest male volleyball player at the games. Like him and I are good friends now because he was at UMB as well, and I'm pretty sure he might have been the youngest guy there because he's actually, for our grade, he's actually a little younger.
Wasn't Mark pretty young too? As well?
Yeah, Mark was young. Yeah, Mark White. I don't know if you know who that is, Everett.
Mark White, Matt Sweet.
Yeah. So
Matt Sweet was a beast.
Guys as well.
Matt Sweet was a beast.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, still is, honestly. Still is.
Yeah.
Not was. Can't say past tense because he can still play.
He still is. He taught me how to pass at the Ale House in Halifax one night. So, yeah, it's just Iron Man.
At the Ale House. I think that is. I still remember, like, I think some of the craziest nights I've had just with volleyball people have come in Halifax. Like
That sounds about right.
We'll show you a time for sure.
that one World League weekend. Who do we have? Was it? Oh yeah, it was Argentina in Halifax. It was 2015. That one was. That was a time. That was honestly, like, I grew up in Ottawa, and I would much prefer living in Halifax than Ottawa. Like,
it's a sweet time, honestly.
It is, yeah.
Like,
It's got more to offer, I think, than people think. Honestly, like it's even though it's on the East Coast and we're known to be pretty small, it's a lot bigger than what you would assume, and it's kind of that spot for all the East Coast provinces to go and have that bigger city time, even though we're not that big.
Don't we have the highest bars per capita, like on our street? So
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well too. I mean, I'm like a big city guy. That's I live in Toronto, maybe Vancouver or Montreal, but I could always if not push came to shove, but if something came up, I think I could definitely live in Halifax. Although I was in Freddie last spring, and Freddie is a really nice town too.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah,
it's great in the summer.
Yeah. Winter's not so much.
Winter's miserable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but it's beautiful in the summer. It's been 40 like a couple days here and over the last month, so
that's a little bit stinky.
That's
that's pretty, hopefully you guys have air conditioning.
Yeah, you have to here, I'd say.
Now, so we talked a little bit before how few options there are to play post-secondary in the East Coast. What do you guys think would be some of the ways that we could increase that? Because there's so many schools, like good schools in good volleyball towns that I would love to see them offering men's volleyball, but it seems like we're going the opposite direction, losing Memorial and, before that we lost Moncton and so on and so forth. So what are some of the things that we can do to kind of increase the number of players in the East Coast of Canada?
I think just the exposure for the East Coast players to have, because if you have more exposure as a kid coming up, then maybe you can play in Ontario or play somewhere else in Canada or even NCAA. There's only a few people from the East Coast who go to NCAA, but I think just like having the exposure of your game would help it a lot, I think. Because teams take a lot of money. To put a new team in a league takes a lot of funding. So I think if players from certain spots start branching out and going to different teams that aren't the norm, then I think that would help the game evolve on the East Coast.
Do you guys see any of those kind of initiatives happening, or is it, Jordan's face kind of just tells it all right there? And I've noticed that. Here's kind of my theory of it. I've noticed quite a bit that there's an older generation of volleyball, and then there's a gap, and then there's a younger generation of volleyball. And like guys like you and I, and like there's coaches. You talked about Mark White, Matt Sweet. There's coaches kind of like across like coast to coast who are in a younger generation are starting to kind of like take control and be like, let's do something with this, because it seems to me as though the older generation did so much work and fought so much for the sport, and then got to a certain point and was just happy with it. And now it's kind of time for the younger generation to pick up the reins and be like, hey, let's actually move forward with this.
What do you think, Tyler? I'll let you go. I'll let you say something.
Well,
I'm
for the amount
of
universities we have in East Coast, to only have 2 male teams in Nova Scotia is kind of like, it's really disappointing, because there's so many universities in Halifax. Like SMU could have a team, Acadia could have a team. Cape Breton could have a team. There's so many universities in the Mount,
Moncton.
Kings, Moncton.
But Ty, one thing when we were growing up, Dal had no East Coast guys. They would have one guy from the East Coast, but now that's if you're an elite level athlete, you go to Dal. Because from Nova Scotia.
When I was younger, when I was in high school, I wanted to play at Dal. I just wasn't good enough to make the team, and then when it came to the point where like, I'm not going to go to Dal, I'm like, why am I going to search to play volleyball somewhere else, where my dream was to play for Dal, but I'm not good enough to play there. So I decided to play soccer instead. And there's so many athletes, like male volleyball players, that's what goes through their head. Like, why am I going to try to play volleyball if I can't make the team? That I was playing for. Because I think at the time when I was young, it was only Adam Hodgkiss and Scott Townsend that were like Nova Scotian Dal players, right? And then after me, there were so many more. But then when I was in grade 12, there wasn't too many.
Kelso was Angus Campbell, sorry, was the only person. He looks just like Kelso from that '70s show. That's why I got that name. But he was the only guy from our Nova Scotia class that went to Dal to play.
Yeah. And then Alex Dempsey went the year after.
And then it started.
And that really broke more.
Yeah, it seemed like in the past, Dow was always bolstered by, coming from Ontario, it was always kind of the notion of like if you didn't have the grades to get into some of the better schools in Ontario, you'd go to Dow. But then also Dow offered a lot more athletic scholarships too. Yeah. And I think part of it too is that up until recently, so many of the coaches within the OUA were just part-time coaches, and that like the budgets were so small for some of these schools, but men's volleyball in the OUA has been getting more and more popular, and you see these schools really starting to investing it with full-time programs. And when you have that kind of money, guys in Ontario are just naturally gonna stay. But Which
is crazy to say, because like Dal is such an academic school, that's
what like especially for like a certain demographic of kids here, it's like in their minds it's Queens, Western, or Dal. Yeah, and it's we all know about the kids where the Ontario kids we're talking about there, the loafer types, the Sperry's and stuff.
There's lots of those crawling around Dal's campus.
Yeah, exactly.
Chads and the Brats.
Matt Donovan, if you feel targeted, I'm sorry.
Donnie's a beast.
Man, nice guy.
Oh, great volleyball player. He is. Yeah, he's amazing to watch.
He's one of those guys that like, I know he wants to be. Pretty sure he wants to be a doctor. So he's like kind of in between. But man, if he pushes that beach and like went for it, he could go far. Like I know. I watched him play his first tournament and was like watching him was like, oh dang, like this kid's good. I mean, I remember watching him playing club, and he was like a third middle for his club team because he was sitting behind 2 7-footers. But it would always in like the like if his team was down, they would always sub in Donnie. He would always just come in and just kind of go to town. So I'm happy. I was so happy to see him have success and be good. Is he still on the East Coast with you guys? Is he still out there?
I think he is still.
We saw him last week.
Yeah, we watched him play beach.
He was down on the waterfront playing a little beach. So
I think he hops back and forth. I think a little bit now, but I think home base is here. But I think back last summer, and maybe even the last 2 summers, he's tried to take beach a little more seriously. So I think he's actually spent that time playing up there in Ontario, where you can get a little bit better practice. And so I think he's kind of still back and forth between the two, but I think it's home base here for him.
Fair enough. For you guys in your guys' seasons, like here in Ontario, we run club season starts in September and we run all the way through to nationals in May. But you guys are more of like a January to May kind of schedule, right?
It's like high school provincials are done, and then the next day is the first tryout for club season. So like you'll win provincials, and the very next day you have club tryouts. Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy turnover, honestly.
We have like we have what's called a tryout window, and you may have the same. I don't know, but yours might start. Yeah, so we have the tryout window. And back when we used to play club, when we were younger, you could start in September, October-ish, and what we would do is high school volleyball is like it's taken quite serious, especially now because that's the only option you have in those months. So it's pretty competitive, and you want to win it really bad. It's not something that like a top player would choose not to play. But back when we played, you would start your club, you'd pick your team, and you'd practice maybe once a week, twice a week, just here and there. Maybe have a weekend off with high school, and you'd have a little training camp. But your tournaments and stuff didn't start until January. But now they've kind of gone away with that, and it's just high school up until December 5th or whatever day that falls on. That Saturday, and then Sunday is when you try things out. And then in New Brunswick, which I'm sure you're aware of, Everett, they have club from September till December, and their school volleyball is after. So if they want to go to nationals, they actually have to kind of continue their club season when there's no tournaments in New Brunswick. So they have to practice and then travel to play.
They usually come to Nova Scotia to do tournaments.
Makes sense. I mean, I guess that does make sense why, like the New Brunswick teams, like often the New Brunswick teams is basically just like ESA.
Yeah.
It's just because St. Anne just throwing together their high school team and that's their club team, and then they just run
and it's easier that way for them because of how the things work. Like someone like a Mark White or a Matt Logier, who you may be aware of, he used to set at UMB.
He was nasty.
Those guys.
He's like one of the nicest guys too.
Matt Logier came so close to making the junior national team one year, and I remember. That was like the year I first started working for Volleyball Canada. I remember talking to like some of the people who were running it, and they're being like, "Dude, there's this little blonde kid from New Brunswick who just runs around. He's got the silkiest hands and runs a great offense." And he made a serious case for himself at those tryouts. And then those Canada games in 2013, I got to watch him play for New Brunswick, and he was legit.
Yeah, he's incredible. He is, and those guys really. They were lucky in the sense that Henry Millay, who coaches at Stu, him and his brother Bert, who used to be really involved as well, they kind of coached every single ESA team. Like they'd have like 3 teams each, so it would be like one of them would do the 14U boys and the junior high team, and the other one would do the high school and the 16U and the 18. So they got to just play together, and they had quality coaches all the way through. So those, the Castors was a name that after a couple of years at nationals, it was a name I'm sure those, guys like you from Ontario would be, familiar with. They actually were a team that could compete at that nationals and stuff. So, and I think going back to what you said about the East Coast, and having success for us is, I think there needs to be more of that. I think that would help a lot if, there's a lot of bouncing around, for our clubs. Like, it happens everywhere, but here it's, kids will graduate high school and have played for 5 different clubs, and it doesn't really give them the opportunity to, learn from somebody at least for 2 or 3 years and kind of master those things that they're taught, and then go on somewheres and learn from someone else. It's like you're getting good at something, and the next thing you know, someone else is telling you something different. And I think, like, to answer the earlier question, I think that's a big part of our problem, is that there's that stuff doesn't really happen.
And not all the best coaches coach high school, right? Like high school is such a long season. You have people that haven't even played volleyball coaching high school at times, right? Like our school was lucky. Yeah. Our school was lucky that, like CPA, that we coached, that they had 4 or 5 ex-university players coaching them, type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People who were passionate and really lived it, whereas some of the schools, it's, they're begging for people up until and I think it comes back to, like, if we had more World League games in Halifax, and when we were hosting those beach events, which I don't know if you were ever a part of those, but
I never got a chance to go to them, but I was always, and still to this day, I'm so intrigued with Halifax of being I think Halifax could be like a world-class location for beach events. Like down in those harborfront, right down in those courts. Like, it just seems like it would be such a perfect. I mean, I actually made a trip out there because I was hoping kind of maybe to see if we could put on an event out there. Just like, let's just start an event out there and kind of see how it grows. And
that would help.
And the best thing about that spot is, literally off of the beach courts are all the bars and all the restaurants. Like, you step off the beach courts and you're at everything.
And there's so many people walking by and just watching. They haven't seen volleyball at that level. And even where you get high-level athletes playing beach now just for fun, people are stopping and watching. And, like, you get a crowd of people just out for a walk, but they see this great game going on. So I think the more volleyball in Nova Scotia and in Halifax. Yeah.
Like, when I look at the Olympics, and I know you guys are going to agree, and Everett, you probably had the same thing, but when the Olympics happened and we had, we were well represented the past Olympics, the amount of texts I would receive from family members and friends who know nothing about volleyball are like, man, no wonder you played volleyball. Like, this is the craziest sport ever. And it's like, no one out east knows. They don't care about it because they don't see it, So even television wise, like it should be on TV. People don't get how sweet it is. You know what I mean?
It's a sport that's built for TV.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's another conversation we could have just in how we film it. I hate the side angle. I'm all about the end angle. But I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree. The last Olympics was a surreal experience to be sitting in a bar in a downtown Toronto bar, and every widescreen on, usually you're watching the Jays, the Leafs. I'm not a Leafs fan, but for the record, I'm from Ottawa, so
we're Leafs fans. We're Leafs fans.
Ouch.
Not me. Not me. I just don't watch hockey.
That sucks,
Fair
Jordan.
enough.
That's bad.
Yeah, no, I'm not a Leafs fan, but these places where I'm used to watching big league teams, and we were watching, Sarah and Heather at the time, or we're watching the men's team, and my friends were just like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. This is why don't we watch this all the time? And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. It's a crazy thing because it's funny. You guys talked about how so many of these schools just have coaches who don't know anything about volleyball, right? But when I first worked at Volleyball Canada, this is going back 2011. I was 19 years old, and our current development coordinator at the time, his philosophy was, volleyball is too hard of a sport to teach at a young age, so we're just going to wait, and we're going to pick up the kids who drop out from the hockeys and the basketballs and the soccers and the footballs at a later age. And his big argument for this was, I'm sure you guys know him, but Craig Toonders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Craig Toonders.
I played with Craig.
Yeah, I figured as much. Craig was a guy who I was a rookie with in college. We were both first years at Algonquin College together. And he had played a little bit of high school, but big, tall, athletic guy, had never really played volleyball. And played 2 years at Algonquin, went and played for UNB, played for Team New Brunswick on the indoor side of things. But even back then, I was looking at being like, no, this is wrong. Like, we need to start trying to get kids at a younger age. And his big thing was like, we're really, really lucky in volleyball because volleyball's taught in the schools. Grade 2 and grade 3, it's part of their curriculum, so it's taught. But when you look at it that way, you've usually got a gym teacher who, thought he was going to make the NHL, even though he was still playing junior B, and then decided, he's like, oh crap, I got to do something, so I'm going to become a gym teacher. He knows dodgeball, he knows soccer, he knows football, and he knows hockey, but volleyball, you knew nothing. And then you're using these terrible $5 balls that would just, either they couldn't inflate or they were too inflated. So it just is the scenario where everyone's first experience of volleyball is so terrible. Everyone's first experience, and then the only volleyball they see is at the rec center or something like that, and it's people who can't, it's just let's get the ball over the net. And so that's why I know for me, it was such an eye-opening experience seeing the game at the international level for the first time. And it was just what is going on here? This is something different.
I think I lucked out in junior high because my coach was a G. He had us running X's and everything in junior high. We were nice, but then I didn't play club volleyball. I just played junior high. So I only had the 4 months of development, not the full year. And then it wasn't until I went to high school that I played club volleyball. So I only got 3 years of club volleyball where I really learned everything else. But my junior high coach was a legit volleyball coach. So I lucked out where not too many other people would.
Yeah, you were one of the only ones who really had that experience at that age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, touching on that point you brought up, that's why we coach female volleyball instead of male, because you get the top level athletes.
Yeah.
For men's volleyball, you lose out on a lot of different athletes that choose basketball, football, or hockey. And female, they normally choose volleyball. Some will play soccer, some will play other sports, but it's just wider variety to pick from, and you always get higher level athletes. So that's why we've always coached female.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's coaching guys and girls is just way different in terms of how you approach the game. I think that's one of the things I love most about volleyball is that the men's and the women's games are so distinctively different in their own ways. It's a whole
different game,
right?
Yeah. A whole different game.
The men's is all about the power and the speed and it's just pure athleticism, where the women's is such a chess match and there's so much control and strategy that goes into it, and that's why I think it's great that we have that. It's not let's say the NBA and the WNBA, and I have nothing wrong. I love the WNBA. I've watched many of those games. I've never been to one, obviously, because I don't live in the States. But at the end of the day, they're not dunking, they're not doing these other things that we watch from the NBA. Whereas women's volleyball just brings a completely other different side that you're never going to see in men's volleyball, with the speed of the game and the speed of the decisions, the defensive plays. Yeah, it's completely different. But you guys don't think that if there was more people championing men's volleyball and boys volleyball, that maybe there would be, more repercussions for that?
Definitely.
Love to.
Oh, for sure.
I have the idea of I want to go coach younger guys, like a junior high team, when I have more free time, and start a program of male volleyball and really go up and get them to develop as best as possible. But the thing is, I just don't have the time to coach a junior high team while I'm coaching at Mount St. Vincent and coaching soccer all at the same time.
Yeah.
Tyler and I actually have talked about, he mentioned the black volleyball and how it used to be very popular. We've talked with Dad about maybe trying to, the community that my dad is actually from, the community that Tyler's from, Preston, Nova Scotia. And it's a goal of ours to someday grab a group of young guys from that community and introduce them to the game young. But it will take a lot of commitment and time that we just don't have at our age.
Because there's a lot of great athletes that come out of Preston, a lot of great athletes. And they don't go play other places, and they only play basketball now, right? So if we can get some of those athletes to play some volleyball, who knows what could happen for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I know for me growing up in Ontario volleyball, it was very, very white. Very, very white, and being on, you could count the few black guys, the few Indian guys that we had in the entire OVA. But I mean, at the time, we had 8 teams in our 18U boys provincials. Now there's 30 some. And that's one thing I've noticed over the past decade is you see these communities like Mississauga and Scarborough, who are typically immigrant communities, and you've got the Indians, you've got the black people. And they come in and they bring so much swagger to the game. And the amount of swagger I've seen grow in Ontario volleyball over the past decade has been incredible. And I 100% attribute that to the fact that we have different color people playing the game now with us. It's not just
the drip.
Straight up though, right? We don't just have guys wearing Mizunos anymore. Because that was back in my day, and I'm sure you guys were all around the same age.
I rock black Mizunos.
Yeah, everyone wore the Mizunos.
They had to be black Mizunos. No other color but black Mizunos.
But now everyone's got the Jordans. They've got the Nikes, the Currys, whatever it is. And I think just all of these different these different cultures have been able to come in and find a home in the Ontario volleyball community, and I think that's been awesome. Last year I got to go live stream a Indian volleyball tournament, and it's just different Indian or Indo-Pak, so Indian and Pakistani regions from all across North America. They had teams from California, from Philly, from Calgary, from Vancouver, and it was just all Indian guys. And it was the young teams from Mississauga and Waterloo, all of these younger Pac-Man guys who ended up winning because they were good volleyball players. All of these other guys were just men playing volleyball. I saw some gnarly volleyball that day, some ugly things. But then you saw this younger generation who had been playing the sport and were really, really good at it and creating a new identity for themselves within that sport. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's even important to see the Sharons or the Tyrells or the Tyreeks playing at the next level, or just having someone they can relate to and be man, I can see myself playing this game. And even Sharon going right to the national team and not playing that's huge for volleyball in Canada.
Oh yeah, it was massive, and the growth that we've seen, and that's kind of what I think one of the biggest reasons that we can see such growth on all fronts, beach, men's, women's, whatever, in the past decade is really that volleyball's been able to get to a new demographic. It's not just the same old white kids who are playing volleyball. It's a lot more of these different ethnic groups are coming in and finding their own community within the community, and I think that's been amazing. So yeah, if you guys want to start that up there and start bringing a team of brothers to nationals, that would be I think that would be awesome.
It would be a whole different experience, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in high school, I had a volleyball game. I think it was against Lockview, but there was a basketball game right after me, and it was Cole Harbour High versus Auburn. And if you know my community, that's a huge rivalry. So I just remember showing up to my volleyball game. Usually there's no one there, but then everyone's trying to get an early seat to watch the basketball game, and I just went off. I was getting headshots, hitting people off the chest, just trying to make a show for everyone, to show what volleyball really was, because it was the first time that people from my community came and watched me play, and I just went off.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, like, obviously Courtney Baker, she's black. She's a woman of color. Does someone like that, like of her pedigree, do you think that will create like a ripple effect and start pushing more people towards, more younger girls to come start playing volleyball?
I think it will. I think it would make them, her being the best we've seen in Nova Scotia in a long time, for those couple of black girls that are already playing, they would see that, and I think that will help a bit. I think where the big help's going to be is if we get someone, because she's from Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, which is a predominantly white place.
Real white community.
Like very, very white. So I think, and I do think she definitely made a difference, and people see her there and they're like, okay, she looks like me and she's out here doing this. But go ahead.
Even Courtney said that Shanice was one of her role models because it's someone who she identified with, who she could relate to. So going back to Jordan, sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no problem. I always get you, so I deserve it.
Yeah, going back to you, Jordan. But yeah, if there's someone from Preston or from that community who they know their grandmother, they know their auntie, they'll be much more inclined to.
That would be that's where it's really going to change, I think. Yeah.
Is Preston like a smaller community within Sackville? Is that it?
No, it's in Dartmouth.
Oh, it's in.
So Halifax, like we're kind of like the GTA. Ours is the HRM, right? So Preston is just another. Sackville and Preston would almost be like they're just sections of the HRM, right?
Okay,
so it's got a lot more people than what a lot of people think. Like it's country. Like there's a lot of
well,
it is. Tyler.
I know.
People who've never been there, like they don't understand the type of place it is. Like these people have, they own their own land. They have bigger yards. Some of them, and people that haven't been there don't get that. But there's a ton of people up there, and a lot of people don't really understand that. So really,
a lot of people think there's not black people in Nova Scotia. But then you get, I have to check a lot of people to recognize that some of the most historical black communities are in Nova Scotia. Even
a lot of Toronto's black people are from Nova Scotia.
I have so many family members that live and move to Toronto, like Wayne Simmons, who plays hockey. Like his family would be from North Preston and would have moved out to Toronto. Like there's so many.
Evander Kane's another one in the NHL. Yeah.
So and where I'm from, we kind of revolutionized hockey. And the NHL just released a post yesterday or on June 19th, 2 days ago, about how the Colored Hockey League in Nova Scotia revolutionized hockey and created the slap shot and the butterfly, and that came from black Nova Scotians playing hockey.
Was Willie O'Ree? Was he a Nova Scotian guy?
He's actually from Fredericton, which is really weird because he's the first. It doesn't really make any sense because he's the first black guy in the NHL, but Fredericton's real white, so honestly, most people would probably assume that because I remember hearing that when I moved to Fredericton, it was the first black NHL player was from here, and I'm like, well, where are the other black people? I'm the only one here. You know what I mean?
And that's because the Colored Hockey League was disbanded and no one played after that, right? So no one transferred over and it took a while, and then he got there, and then it took a while for us to get players to go. There's always Nova Scotian.
The beach courts in Fredericton are actually named after him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're at the Willie O'Ree Center. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen. I guess I did know that those courts were called the Willie O'Ree courts. So I guess
which is
pretty
cool.
Is that something that like Tyler and or is that something that you guys experienced? Like, was there much racism? I guess in the volleyball, I'm sure there was racism in general in the East Coast, but like in the volleyball world specifically, is that something you guys had to deal with quite a bit, or?
Not really. I mean, the smaller stuff for me, Tyler might have more stories, but me, it was just the things where people don't realize that they're being racist by saying it.
Like, oh, you can jump because you're black.
Yeah.
Like, no, I actually had to work out to get to where I'm at. I couldn't get over the height of the net in grade 10.
It's called
I had to do that quite often, actually.
But nothing like hockey, you know, like I know hockey's probably the worst sport for it, where these poor kids are, you know, they're trying to make a career in hockey and they're just getting harassed left and right, and the fans and the parents are on them. I can think Tyler can agree with me that we never had an experience like that.
Jordan, we were lucky because we had a bunch of black role models in volleyball in Nova Scotia, right? Like your dad was one of them.
Dad. Yeah,
like, there's some Howie Jackson and Brad Barton and Anthony Pleasant and Dave Fairfax. There's so many black people. Like there's a black
referees
volleyball
and
community.
coaches.
Yeah, black volleyball community that kind of had our back. But for the younger generation, I wouldn't say that there's like me and you and Justin, honestly, and then now Courtney.
Yeah,
so there's like
she needs to stick around. She can't leave. Once her career's done, that is.
Yeah, I feel like she's going to be leaving pretty soon because I'm sure that you know there might be a team or two overseas who being like, you're a big tall setter, play for Team Canada. Yeah, we'll take you. Come on, come to Germany.
As long as she comes back, maybe we can convince Shanice to come over too. That would help things out a little bit.
You know,
that's a second cousin.
Yeah.